The sun beat down on the open plains of Montana, where the wind carried the scent of pine and solitude. A lone figure moved steadily in the tall grass, her shadow dancing along the earth as she hauled a plank of wood toward a half-finished log cabin. Her hands were blistered, her back ached, and a bead of sweat rolled down her temple. But Ellie Jameson didn't stop. 7 months pregnant and completely alone, she had one mission, to finish this cabin before the baby came. Her husband, a soldier, had died overseas just 3 months earlier. With no family left and nowhere else to go, Ellie bought a cheap patch of land and vowed to create a home where their child could grow up safe, strong, and surrounded by the love she refused to let die. Locals had watched her from afar, murmuring disbelief at the pregnant woman chopping wood and hammering nails with only sheer will to guide her. But Ellie didn't care. Each plank nailed, each board raised, was a quiet conversation with her late husband. "We can do this," she'd whisper. "I promised you I'd be strong." She'd wrap her arms around her belly at night under the stars, her only comfort the kicking of the life inside her. Just a few miles away, Luke Carson rode across his ranch, saddle creaking beneath him, boots dusty from the trail. A millionaire cattle rancher and former rodeo star, Luke had everything a man could want: land, money, reputation. But ever since his wife had passed 5 years ago, leaving behind a silence that echoed louder than any crowd ever could, something had gone missing in him. He still rode, still ran the business, but joy had long since vanished from his horizon. One crisp morning, while checking the fences near the edge of his property, Luke spotted movement across the hill. He pulled his horse to a stop, narrowed his eyes, and watched in disbelief as a pregnant woman, barely bigger than a tumbleweed, hoisted logs and hammered them into place. Something about her struck him. Maybe it was the way she gritted her teeth as she lifted each beam. Maybe it was the way she paused, hand on her belly, like she was drawing strength from within. But whatever it was, Luke couldn't look away. The next day, curiosity got the better of him. He returned with his horse, riding slowly toward her boundary. "Mornin'," he called out from a respectful distance. Ellie, startled, stood up straight, hammer in hand. "Can I help you?" she asked, wiping sweat from her brow. "I reckon I should be a skin, you that," Luke said with a half smile. "Name's Luke Carson. My ranch butts up to your land. I've been watchin' you work. Thought you might need a hand." Ellie looked him over: clean boots, expensive saddle, polished spurs. He was the kind of man who probably never lifted more than a steak knife. "I appreciate it," she replied calmly, "but I've got it handled." Luke tipped his hat. "I believe you do." But nobody said strength meant refusin' help. That night, Luke couldn't sleep. There was something about the woman, Ellie, that stayed with him. Her strength, her grit, the loneliness she wore like armor. The next morning, he returned, not with pity, but with supplies. Nails, a better hammer, fresh drinking water, and a thermal blanket. He didn't say much, just placed them at the edge of her camp and left. And the next day, he came back again, this time, helping her lift a roof beam into place. At first, Ellie resisted. She wasn't used to kindness without strings. But Luke never asked questions. Never tried to save her. He simply stood by her side and did the work she needed done. Day after day, plank by plank, the cabin began to take shape, strong, sturdy, warm. As they worked, they began to talk. She told him about James, her husband, and how they dreamed of this little piece of heaven. Luke shared stories of his late wife, of how silence had filled their home when cancer took her in less than a year. "I thought I'd seen the end of new beginnings," he admitted one day, placing a hand on the new cabin window frame. Ellie paused, her hammer still in the air. "I used to think the same," she whispered. One afternoon, as winter wind curled around them, Ellie collapsed with a cry. Luke rushed to her side, catching her just before she hit the ground. Panic surged through him, until she gasped, "It's time." With no time to get to a hospital, Luke carried her into the nearly finished cabin, laying her down on the mattress he'd just brought days earlier. He built a fire, fetched water, and stayed by her side through the long, agonizing night. She screamed, cried, and clutched his hand so hard he thought it might break, but she brought life into that tiny cabin, surrounded by the very wood she carved with her own hands. A baby girl. Healthy. Beautiful. And strong. Tears slid down Ellie's cheeks as she cradled her daughter, whispering, "You're home, baby girl. You're home." Luke sat beside her, eyes shining. "She's got your fire," he said softly. In the days that followed, Luke didn't leave. He brought food, helped fix the cabin's last corners, and sat on the porch holding the baby while Ellie slept. But the truth was, he wasn't just helping anymore. He was healing too. For the first time in years, his mornings had meaning. His evenings had laughter. That little cabin in the wild became more than just shelter, it became sacred ground where loss transformed into hope. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky with streaks of gold and lavender, Ellie stepped outside with her daughter in her arms. Luke stood near the fence, ready to ride home. She walked up to him slowly and said, "I couldn't have done this without you." "You would've," he replied. "But I'm glad you didn't have to." There was a long pause, the kind filled with unspoken truth. Then Ellie looked up, her eyes glistening. "You stayed." Luke smiled, tipping his hat. "Maybe it's time I stopped running and started building again. If you'll have me around." Ellie glanced down at her baby, then back at the man who had quietly become her anchor. "We'd like that," she said. And just like that, something beautiful bloomed on the prairie, out of grief, grit, and two broken hearts brave enough to hope again. The cabin, once a symbol of survival, became a home not built with wood alone, but with kindness, resilience, and the courage to let others in. Because sometimes, strength isn't just what you carry alone, it's what you allow others to carry with you. And love? Love builds the walls that weather any storm.